And we are live. Bronson, how are you, man?
Doing great, man. Great night's sleep. Coffee this morning. We're good to go.
Shoot, yeah, man. The futon worked all right for you?
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Good. So we recorded quite a bit yesterday about fitness, and you wanted to make sure we transition from, what is fitness to why fitness.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that.
Let's dive into it, man.
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night. We talked really, in depth yesterday about, what is fitness? What are the components? What does fitness look like in someone's life? What are the things that you need to focus on as you're working on your fitness? And the piece to that, I started thinking about why does it even matter? We're telling people you need to be fit. You need to consider all these things when you're looking at a program, when you're looking at implementing some type of fitness routine in your life. Why? And it got me thinking about I don't know if you've heard of the sickness wellness continuum. Right?
I've heard of it, but I couldn't draw it on a piece of paper if you had.
Yeah. So and actually, this might be something we can put in a link to it in the show notes or something, so people can have a visual. But basically, if you think about all of the aspects of things that we look at when someone's sick or when someone's well, right? They all are measures of the same thing, just on different spectrums. And fitness is kind of what ties that together, right? If you look at people that are sick or well, right? We look at the measures that we're looking at. We're looking at, cholesterol level. We're looking at blood pressure. We're looking at body fat percentage, lean mass percentage. We're looking at inflammation. We're looking at all of these factors. Mm-hmm. And when those factors are negative, someone's sick. When those factors are good, someone's healthy, or we consider them to be well. And fitness is one of those things, besides nutrition, that can bring those things together and make that change. So when someone is doing things to improve those 10 aspects, those 10 components of fitness, right? Strength, power, speed, agility, coordination, all that kind of stuff. There are physiological changes in their body that happen to elicit an increase in an adaptation to allow their body to perform better. And in order for your body to perform better, those markers have to change. If your body is performing well and efficiently, your cholesterol is going to be better. Mm-hmm. Your blood pressure is going to be better. You're going to have more lean mass. You're going to have less body fat. You're going to have less inflammation. So if you're doing all of those things, fitness isn't about being able to work out. It's not about having a six-pack. It's not about having big muscles. It's not about even just being lean. It's about improving your health. And that is the why. We talk about nutrition all the time, and I think in our space, we're in the keto carnivore space. So that's kind of the foundation of what everybody thinks about. Like if you're eating, high fat, low carbs, moderate protein, or whatever configuration of macros someone's going to be in, that is all often the focus of the conversation. And we forget sometimes that there's a big piece that fitness plays, a big role that fitness plays in the whole picture.
Well, you often hear these success stories of, my Aunt Nancy lost 50 pounds and she never went to the gym once,
Right. Absolutely.
So you hear all these and it's okay, that's cool. It's like bragging rights, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that should be bragging rights at all. It should be the exact opposite. People should be compelled and motivated to, address that aspect of their overall health as well.
Absolutely, because it's about quality of life.
Yeah.
And the ability, my focus is on freedom. And, freedom is a choice is kind of my tagline. But at the same point, it's your physical ability, right, is how you express your freedom.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much freedom you have if you can't take advantage of it and actually do things with it. So the point of so-and-so lost 50 pounds is still just an example of the mindset people have of where just weight is an indicator of health.
Yeah.
Right? That person lost 50 pounds, that's great. They're still probably have a low lean mass. Mm-hmm. We don't know what any of their other markers are, right? Probably lower lean mass means their inflammation is higher than it needs to be because body fat, adipose tissue is an organ of inflammation. So even though you lost a bunch of weight, how much lean mass did you lose? How much body fat did you lose? There's no way to tell.
Yeah.
Because you're focusing on the wrong thing, right? We talk about weight loss a lot when we shouldn't be. Weight loss is, in my estimation, my opinion, is a red herring when it comes to health.
Yeah, because, I mean, fat loss is a much better metric. Muscle
Absolutely.
gain, I mean, composition matters so much more so than weight. That's why, like, the number on the scale and tracking that on a daily basis can be very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't sway from that. I do that myself. But people get so fixated on the number on the scale exclusively.
Right.
They don't pay any mind to, are their lifts going up in the gym? Are they getting stronger? Is their composition improving? That's why, like, taking measurements and pictures are so incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like pulling teeth to get anybody to do it,
Yeah, and it's hard to get people to understand because it's been drilled into us
Yeah.
for so long, right? Wait, it's the establishment, right? It's work more, eat less, and your weight is the key.
Yeah.
And that's such a high level on the surface way of looking at it. It's such a simplistic view of looking at it that it misses all the things. Like we talked about last night off camera recording, about the calories.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about, is calories in, calories out a thing? Does it matter? How much do hormones play into this whole thing? And all that kind of stuff. So we can segue into that conversation if you want, since we were kind of
man, it's real personal. So we got calories on the table. We're gonna dive into that, and
Yep.
I'd love to. I feel like you and I have very different opinions on like macronutrient ratio breakdown.
Sure.
So we can dive into that too. So yeah, man,
Okay.
let's just roll up our sleeves
So
and jump
you
in.
start. What's your thoughts on calories? You were saying that you think calories are.
I mean, I think
a
it all
big piece.
matters. All right.
Yeah.
So like we, what we were talking about last night is people that have come from a fitness background
Mm-hmm.
and they've just been brought up in the calorie manipulation program, calories in, calories out, energy balance. For that demographic to look at the other side of the spectrum and hear people put so much emphasis on hormones and it all being about hormones and calories not mattering it's a very tough bridge to cross.
Sure.
I've always taken the approach of it all matters. It's all holistic in nature. Everything has, like, I don't like dealing in absolutes. So people that say it's all hormones, I don't agree with. People say it's all calories, I don't agree with.
100%.
It's all holistic in nature. So there needs to be an emphasis about calories. Now, whether you use the word calorie itself, I feel like the word calorie has a negative connotation to it to so many people. Just sub that in for energy, like the fuel you're consuming. The amount of fuel
That's a huge key. Yeah.
you consume is going to have an impact. You can have a surplus of fuel. You can have a deficit of fuel.
Right.
Like that freaking matters. And anybody that says it doesn't is just ignorant. Now, I will say this, the context of the fuel in your system, I mean, hormones are a major, mechanism within your system. That's going to determine how efficiently you use that fuel.
Absolutely.
So that matters. I mean, it's all... People like to think of bodies, human bodies. They use like the vehicle analogy. It's just a car, but that's a closed loop system, and humans are not closed loop systems.
Right.
So you can't deal in absolutes. Like anybody that tries to say it's all absolutes is just missing the beat. Now, I will say there's areas that probably deserve more high level focus, and then once you refine that level, then you can move to the next tier and focus on that. Same thing with like nutrition. Like when you first get into the keto diet, you don't necessarily need to worry about how one specific type of nut may not be the best over another specific type of nut for you. Like, kind of work on the big picture first, get
Right.
that dialed in, and then move to the next tier. And the
Yep.
same is true with regard to body recomp and the whole calories equation versus hormone equation.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think particularly when you have someone who's just getting started, I think we get hung up in following influencers on Instagram, social media, and so and so talked about red light here, cold therapy here. This thing has this anti-nutrient or phytonutrient or whatever, and then we start thinking all these things when we still have 40 pounds of fat to lose.
Yeah.
Right. Just get the basics done, guys, before you start looking at all these other little things and how this may affect you this much, when just stopping drinking that Coke every day is going to affect you this much.
Yeah.
Going back to what you're saying about energy, I think that's a huge key in the misconception of calories.
Yeah.
Calories, I get accused all the time of saying that calories don't matter. That's absolutely incorrect. I think calories do matter. They do play a role. Where my distinction is I think there is a difference in the utilization of what we eat.
Yeah.
Like you said, people use the analogy of us being a car. I like to say people think of us as just an oven or something. We're just burning things all the time.
Yeah.
And they forget that macronutrients have specific uses. hormones respond to each macronutrient differently. And, it's a combination of fuel utilization and hormone response. So the way that I look at it, I do use a car analogy when I talk about macronutrients, because I look at it, but the way that I look at it isn't as everything's going in the gas tank.
Yeah.
Right? I look at it as protein is oil, fat is gas, and carbs are octane booster. Right? So there's 3 different uses, there's 3 different effects. They go to different places in the body. You need protein. It's the building block. It keeps everything going. Right? Oil, you need oil in the car. Yes, does oil burn off? Some, a little bit, sure, but it's a much lower percentage than gas.
Yeah.
Right? So anybody that's driven a car, you got to replace your oil every once in a while, right? Because it does burn off. But it's not, its use and its primary focus isn't to provide energy for the car.
Right.
It keeps the car running. Gasoline is the primary. Fat is the primary fuel that your body works off best. We know that. There is no argument. I don't know how anybody in this day and age can still say that carbs are better for burning fuel. Your body uses less energy. It gets more energy out of it. It causes less inflammation, less oxidative stress. Like it's just your body, mitochondria reproduce and live longer when fat is the primary fuel source. Like there's just so many things about fat that your body loves. Carbs are octane booster. If you want to use them, and in some cases people do get benefit, particularly high-level athletes, they can see a boost in energy because you're popping something in that your body can burn hot, fast, and quick.
See, now,
right?
That may be where we differ a little bit, because if we're going to use the car analogy, I would say
Sure.
the carbs are like the little sludge that gets stuck in your engine.
Well, so and
blow up your engine block.
Yeah, I agree. I agree to that. I agree with that to a bit, in that you wouldn't want to run your car off of octane booster.
Yeah.
Right. There have been some. And again, this is where I think you're right. We disagree a little bit in that. Where's the information line? What's actually out there? Because you've seen, there's some studies that show throw in some carbs right before an event.
Yeah.
You might see a boost. I've experienced both, and I feel like I don't see much of a difference between the two. But for those people that live by, I need carbs to do X, Y, or Z. The idea is that carbs are that little quick burst of energy, but you don't want to be the base.
Yeah. Because
our body has less storage for it on purpose, because it's not supposed to be something that we use all the time, right? If you just look at that evolutionarily, we can store an almost unlimited amount of fat on our body.
Yeah.
We can't store an unlimited amount of fat or unlimited amount of carbs in our body, because it's not supposed to be primary.
Yeah.
Right. So, it burns fast, it burns hot, it creates way more inflammation, way more oxidative stress. It makes, in order to do things with it, our body has to do extra work to use it, right? The steps of breaking it down are extra. Mm-hmm. So it's just, that's how I kind of look at it. Where that plays into the overall calories in, calories out model, I hesitate to give a hard number or percentage, but for the most part, I don't count protein as part of my caloric burn in a day, right? Because most of it, I hesitate to say a percent, let's just say 80% of all the protein that I eat, the calories aren't used for fuel. The calories are used to build muscle and repair, right? It's keeping my body running. I'm not actually burning it to create ATP to move my muscles. Right. So I don't count those calories. So we talked about our macros and what we do and everything. I'm a higher protein, moderate fat kind of protocol that I use, because I'm not looking at most of my calories in a day coming from protein. Most of my burnable calories for energy come from the fat that I eat and the fat on my body, and that's kind of where my focus is. So I don't look at my total. I don't look at my total overall caloric intake that way.
See, I'm similar but different in that I'm higher fat, moderate protein, mm-hmm. very low to minimal carbohydrate, or low to no carbohydrate, and I look at. We're in the same page in that we view fat as being our primary fuel source. That's our energy. Yep. Protein is not a very good substrate for energy. So you're consuming almost 300 grams of protein a day?
Between 250 and 300, depends on the day.
250 and 300.
Yeah.
So do you ever notice any adverse effect from just over consuming protein? Is there a point at which you have any kind of GI distress or any of that?
No, not at all.
Not at all. See, I can keep that fat very high. And since my calories are very high, especially now being in a building phase, my protein intake is pretty solid. I mean, I weigh 175, 178 pounds, and I'm consuming between 175 and about 225 grams of protein a day, which is more than enough to build lean tissue. I mean, that's an optimal range for sure. I can go much lower than that when I'm in a deficit and totally sustain the muscle that I've built thus far. But in a building phase, that's a perfect window for that.
Sure.
I don't notice any positive impact from increasing protein beyond that. I do notice some gastric distress, and I don't feel as good mentally or physically. I'm not as mentally sharp when my protein is just in excess. I don't know. There's a lot of bio-individuality in that equation. The rate at which protein's broken down. You're also doing much leaner sources of protein,
right,
whereas I'm doing a lot of fattier cuts of protein.
Right.
So a lot of it probably too is just what you're doing for an extended period of time that your body adjusts to being able to process efficiently.
Right.
So like if you were to switch to fatty ribeyes instead of sirloins for X amount of time, your gastric system would probably change. And if I was to do the exact opposite and go to more sirloins, mine would change. So there's so much nuance in all this, but I think it's cool because we're coming at it from a slightly different background. But you're excelling in yours, I'm excelling in mine, and both are working very, very well.
Yeah, and it's very possible. Like it's I haven't gone through, because the way that I've developed my method, it's become what it is. I haven't thinking about do I need 250 grams of protein a day to build muscle? Probably not. I could probably do it. I mean, my lean mass is 165-ish, so I could probably do a 1-to-1 ratio of my protein to grams and still build. Do I want to take that chance? I've always been more comfortable just saying, look, if I'm going to be working out as hard as I work out every day, then it makes sense to have more.
Yeah.
So so I go to 1.5 to 2, and that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and we talked about this a little bit off the air too, is that they get so hung up on protein being negative that they'll underconsume protein. And I never advocate for underconsuming protein. So many people chase the ketones, and if you have a very, very high protein, you will by definition have lower ketones.
Right.
But just simply because you have higher protein and lower ketones, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are not fat adapted, not keto adapted. I mean, you're pretty much carnivore. You're not eating carbohydrates.
Yeah, I probably am. I'm never over 10 grams of carbs a day.
Yeah, so it's not like you're getting your energy from carbs.
Right.
So you are totally fat adapted, totally keto adapted, but your ketones probably aren't as high as mine because you have a much higher protein relative to your overall caloric intake than I do. But you're functioning fine, I'm functioning fine.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they just get so hung up on the biometrics that they're tracking, whether that be the ketone numbers, the glucose numbers, which I put a lot of emphasis in that. I feel like that's great information to have depending on what you're trying to do with it. But so many people obsess about that, and they don't learn to listen to their body, and that's where they get in trouble.
Yeah, the information that we have, particularly now, there's so much information that we can get about ourselves, right? CGMs, ketones, all the body composition information we can get from in bodies and things like that. It can be overwhelming, and people can get off base.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where having a coach, having someone that can kind of say, look, this is what you need to focus on right now. Don't worry about this or that or the other thing. We're trying to move you in this direction. These are all you need to worry about. For me, most of the time, most of the people I work with, and for me personally, I really don't care about my ketones. I don't care about my blood sugar, because the way that I eat, by definition, it's like geometry.
Yeah.
It's, if then equals, right? So if I'm not eating a bunch of carbs, if I'm only eating 10 grams of carbs a day, why am I checking my ketones?
Yeah.
Why am I checking my blood sugar?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to waste the time. I'm not eating any of the things that should mess that stuff up. So why does it matter?
Yeah, I'm 100% on the same page there. The reason I would change or track rather the ketones and the glucose is typically when I'm in a competition prep or my clients are in a competition prep, and we're starting them at a caloric intake and then tapering down on that caloric intake. And initially, we're increasing protein and decreasing fat. So I'll figure out what their protein threshold is, at which point they start to see adverse effects from that protein ratio increasing exponentially. And then by tracking ketones and using that data in tandem with the feedback they're giving me about like how they're feeling mentally, how their GI system is, like that is useful. But I'm not checking that to see if they're adhering to keto not sneaking carbs.
Right.
I'm diving much deeper in that. Now, if I've got clients that are sneaking carbs and they're doing a competition prep, then that's a bigger issue. But yeah, I think there's nuance to the data, and especially like the Oura Ring. Like I wear an Oura Ring. I love the Oura Ring. You've got the Samsung watch.
The watch, yeah.
So many people look at HRV and their readiness score, and I think that's great information.
Sure.
But so many people look at that and they'll totally rewrite the script on what they're planning on doing that day just because it says that they should rest a little bit more. And that to me is a slippery slope for sure, because so much of that data is based off of prior trends. So if you're trying to do a progressive overload principle and you're trying to increase intensity, there's going to be a lag effect, and it's going to show what you've done in the past, and it's going to say, oh, you've overdone it. You got to take a step back. And it's like, no. Let me just take you off for the day and show you what I can do. And that's a slippery slope too. I mean, there's always a dichotomy.
Yeah, and it's challenging because, again, there's so much information and people want to make changes quick.
Yeah.
We talked about this early in the first episode of the first chapter of this, whatever. And, people want things to happen quickly, so they get frustrated and want to make change. Mm-hmm. You've got to stick with with what you're doing.
Yeah.
You've got to give it time to work. You may get on your in-body scale. You may look at some ketone numbers and they may be high, they may be low. Don't change what you're doing that day just because it happened one time.
Yeah.
If you see a trend, and that's a huge word people need to understand, it's trends. You're looking at things over time and then trying to determine, what does that mean? Once you figure out what that means, then you can figure out, okay, what are the things that may be affecting this, and make some adjustments as needed. Don't do it after a day or even 2 days.
The trend aspect is why it's so important to track on a very consistent basis, though.
Absolutely.
like a daily basis. For instance, like people will jump on the scale and then 3 weeks later jump on the scale and there could be a massive fluctuation or no fluctuation, but they have no idea what's happening in that window. They have no idea what the trend is, and that gets people in trouble. So track daily, but don't let one day finite piece of number dictate any of your decisions.
Correct.
But yeah, that to me, I mean, you have an engineering background, so to you that must make like just common sense.
Yeah, for me, I'm all about data. So I'm always, for me personally, I track everything.
Yeah.
And but you said, it's a dichotomy because not everybody can function that way.
Yeah.
So working with clients now, most of your clients are bodybuilding. I would assume, they've got physique specific goals, and tracking just comes with that territory.
Yeah.
I was talking to Joe from Two Crazy Ketos, and he was asking the question, should I track everything? Rob tracks everything. Should I not? Dr. Barry says just eat till you're full.
Yeah.
Where's the balance between that? And and I told him, I said, bodybuilders are one of the few sports, maybe the only sport, where your sport is your lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's not like baseball, basketball, football, where you go to the thing, you play your game and you come back, you practice, but you can still kind of have a normal life and do whatever you want. With bodybuilding, everything you do, particularly when you're in prep, affects your performance in your sport.
100%.
And so tracking is just, if you're not okay with tracking, you don't be a bodybuilder.
Yeah. That's a harsh reality. A lot of people don't want to face that, but it's the truth, man. Because you're pushing your body beyond what is a physiological or psychological, normal threshold.
Right.
Like it is not normal to have a human in the wild, sub 5% body
5% body fat, right? Yeah.
So like you have to track, because if you were to just let yourself to your own devices, like you would never restrict your caloric intake enough to get down that low, because your body, your hormones, like evolutionarily, you're just not supposed to do that.
Here's a question: what do you think? So for me, I'll just put a little basis on this. For when I'm not tracking and just kind of eating till I'm full, kind of eating what I feel like eating, I usually end up around 14 or 15% body fat. And I can maintain that pretty easily.
Yeah.
For me to get to a 10%, 9%, I have to track and kind of make sure I'm getting what I want to get, which is what I'm doing now. But when I'm just kind of living my life, I'm usually around 14, 15%. What do you think? What's your experience been with people that are kind of coming in, or you've worked with, and like, hey, I'm not tracking right now, here's where I'm at? What kind of range you think is there a general range of body fat percentage or lean mass for people who aren't tracking but are carnivore or keto?
Yeah, if they've come from a healthy background of training, resistance training, they're conscious of their nutrition, then for males, between 12 and 15, 16, even 17% body fat, depends how they carry it, how much muscle they have. Like that's a healthy range.
Yeah.
You know, like that's like I'm at about 14-15% right now myself. I can maintain this. I still have visible abs, cuts in my quads. You know, I use the mirror kind of as a marker for where I need to trend things. But that's totally sustainable. I can do that, and I've got a very broad range. Like that's my homeostatic set point. So my body wants to be if I'm just living comfortably. But when I'm trying to get down to like 3% body fat, like I am on stage, you know, day, it's not something that you would want to maintain for any length of time. Like it's a very finite period of time that you're doing that, and it's not healthy. Like it's hormonally not healthy. It's metabolically not healthy. Like it is not healthy. However, I gain more from that. You know, mentally, that my overall life improves as a result of that, you know, in its totality, that it's totally worth it for me.
Right.
I would venture to say that maybe it's not worth it for everybody to make it's definitely not worth it for everybody to make a lifestyle out of it, but to be able to push themselves that far for a finite period of time at least once in their life is absolutely going to be advantageous.
Yeah. And I think it's for some people that level of effort may be to get them to 15 or to get them to 10, right? Or to get them to 20. Like it may, the mental hill that someone has to climb to go from a 35% body fat to a 10% or 15% body fat could be just as much for
it's all relative.
To go from 10 to 3.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we've also been doing this for a while.
Right.
Like you've been in bodybuilding for how long?
12 years now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and I've been in fitness for about eight, almost 9 years.
Yeah.
So we've kind of built into where we are.
Yep.
Cool. I think, I just the aspect of calories, the aspect of hormones. We talk about protein. The when we talk about hormones and protein, I think that's another thing that a lot of people still don't realize is when we talk about using protein to build muscle, using protein not using protein as a fuel, and using it to help manage your body composition. Because when you do take more protein, right, your thermogenesis goes up. Protein does have an insulin response, right? So it's designed to help push in BCAAs, not glycogen, right? So, you know, the whole idea of protein having an insulin response, so you don't want to eat it because insulin is the problem with being fat.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't quite hold water when you look at insulin from carbs it's pushing unused energy into your fat cells.
Yeah, there's
insulin from protein is pushing things to help your muscles grow.
There's a lot of nuance there for sure too. Like the thermogenic effect of protein, for instance, being one, it's definitely higher than what you're going to get from carbs or fat. However, it's not an astronomical increase in caloric expenditure that you're getting from the thermic effect of food in protein. So, like for me, being high fat predominantly, the energy gained from having that higher fat is going to yield more overall caloric expenditure than that increase in protein would offset.
Right.
If that makes sense. It's kind of tricky to explain. But like the energy that I'm going to gain by having that higher fat ratio is going to cause me to have more NEAT activity, more exercise activity that's going to yield a net higher outcome of caloric expenditure than I would just simply from the thermic effect of in protein. So there's a lot of nuance there too. A lot of it depends truly on how you structure your body. So like I'm strict keto and I'm high fat, and I've been that way for 6 years. So my body is incredibly efficient at using fat as the primary fuel source, as an energy source. Like you were talking earlier about how, carbs are octane boosters. For me, it's like I don't even have carbs in the equation. For me, the different types of fat can be leveraged. So like an MCT oil, so like a shorter chain carbon fat molecule, I can leverage that like other people use carbs.
Yeah.
And I think that's a result of me being strict keto, high fat as long as I have been. It's not that it's necessarily the right way. It's certainly the right way for me, and I've experimented with it a lot of different ways, and this has been the most effective. But it takes a while to get to that level of fat adaptation, where fat is the key.
Yeah, how can you be a bodybuilder and be a fat-fueled athlete? It doesn't make any sense.
I'm an anomaly, man.
I didn't think it was possible to work in the ATP and glycolytic pathways without carbs. Explain that to me. I don't understand.
Yeah, so that's a tricky one, man, and it's frustrating. You and I are both kind of going about this. We're both doing a building series right now, so we can dive into that too. But I was watching a video the other day. Somebody sent me a video in Instagram, and it was a video of a couple doctors talking with these fitness athletes about how with a ketogenic diet, you're just bound and determined to lose muscle. Like it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm listening to this stuff, and I'm just like getting pissed off and listening to it because just the more they talk, the more ignorant they become.
Right.
And it's like, no, that's just not the way it works. So I'm setting out on a crusade to prove otherwise.
That's exactly similar. That's why I started doing this. I got to.
It's like we got to just put it out there. I mean, we could talk all day long, but you got to put it out there and document it, which I thought I had done, but I guess I hadn't done it well enough. But yeah, so like we talked about in the first episode, you've got the ATP, creatine phosphate, you've got the glycolytic, 8 to 15 rep range. You got beyond that for the endurance aerobic, sports and whatnot, endurance like training, marathon, stuff of that nature. And the concept or the idea that as a ketogenic athlete, you cannot perform at that 8 to 12 rep range blows my. That's the only rep range I'm really using. Like that's where that's my sweet spot right there. That's the typical bodybuilding hypertrophy rep range. That's where I live, and I'll do that, and I'll train with people that are hardcore carb, centric individuals, and I'll run circles around it.
Absolutely.
And I don't get fatigued. I don't bonk out. I don't hit this lactic acid wall that they do. So the people that are saying that, they just have not been adapted long enough. You can't do keto for a month and then try it and not be able to perform at that rep range and say that it doesn't work.
Yeah, how long do you normally see for people? For me, it's 8 to 12, sometimes 14 weeks before people start from an athletic perspective, right? So the day-to-day, and I kind of say there's two levels. There's the day-to-day adaptation where you're just doing your normal stuff and you kind of go through the keto flu and then you feel better after a week or two.
Yeah.
But from an athletic perspective, it took me about 12 weeks. Like everything just dipped off for a while. And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, wait a second, these workouts aren't as hard. So coming from a CrossFit background, right, I'm doing high intensity interval training, anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes at a time. And, it sucked for a while. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, this isn't as bad. Hey, wait, I'm lifting more. My deadlift went up, my back squat went up, my bench went up. I started recovering from injuries. I had 2 torn labrums, right? So coming back from that after going carnivore, like it was faster than any other injury I've had. All the aches and pains that I used to have just kind of just disappeared.
Yeah.
The inflammation was down, my recovery. So I'm 48 years old. I used to work out 3 days a week and feel like crap the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And now I can work out 6 days a week, 7 days a week, and I'm ready to go every single day.
Yeah.
Right. So I've improved, number one, not just from my metabolism being more efficient, but I've doubled my volume in a week. Going from 3 to 6 days a week, that's a lot of progress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's progression. It's a continual thing. It just keeps getting better and better. I mean, yeah, when you first go from a carb dependent lifestyle to keto or fat adapted carnivore, you're going to have that couple week period where like you just don't feel good in normal day-to-day life. Yep. You're not going to be able to focus as well at the office, et cetera, et cetera. Then you'll be able to get through that after a month or so. And then after that, from a performance standpoint, you'll start to notice that you can do things like those first 1 to 6 reps is going to be pretty easy. It's going to be pretty much not much of a change. That 8 to 12 rep range, that may suffer for a month or two. But then after that, it just keeps getting better and better and better. I would say after 6 months, you should probably be where you were previously with carbs. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it just compounds. And what's unique is that your recovery time, like you're saying, is significantly improved. So you're able to train at a higher frequency.
Yep.
So if you're able to train at a higher frequency with less issues from a injury standpoint, then by definition, you're going to have more volume. Yep. And you're going to grow, and you're going to have better recovery, better strength, better stamina, better everything. So I was looking at some videos that popped up on my phone from like 2018, and I was doing like heavy deadlifts in like the 5 rep range. Right. Now I'm doing those same deadlifts in the 10 to 15 rep range, and that's that rep range that you said you can't do, with glycolytic sports.
You can't do it.
But it's like I wasn't even able to do these at that rep scheme with that efficiency when I was eating carbs, and it's like. It blows my mind that there's even an argument out there that you can't build muscle or sustain muscle on a fat-adapted diet. Yeah. But the more of us out there putting out content to the contrary, I mean, that's what we need. We just need to document otherwise.
Yeah, and I mean, I've done it. It's crazy because, before COVID, I think I'd put on about 5 pounds of muscle over a period of several months. And post COVID, I didn't have access to a gym for 6 months, didn't have access to lifting heavy, that kind of stuff. So it went back down again. So again, I saw something. I think I saw somebody. Somebody responded to one of my posts because there was a study that was put out that talked about CrossFit and ketogenic diets, and I posted it. And the response that I got was crazy. Like, there's problems. You can't do that. Okay, look. I just say, you know what? I'm going to just do it again.
Yeah.
I've already done, like you said, I've already done this. I've already talked about it, but let's do it again. And this time, I'm, every day I'm putting out my workout is what I'm eating.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Some days, like while I'm here, we talked about this morning. I'm in Rome, so I'm going to be like the Romans and do more fat.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm really not worried about the fat and the protein ratio as much as I'm just want to show that it can be done without carbs.
Yeah.
So, whatever. It's amazing how much better I feel now, just in general, like energy, no aches and pains, and just being able to go and have the energy all day long, right? Because I've got an endless store. We talked about this. I've got an endless store of energy that my body can use. I never bonk out, and when it comes to bulking, the main reason I got in carnivore, two reasons I got in carnivore. One, major stomach, bowel, digestive issues for years, right? And that was one thing. Hey, maybe if we try this, it'll fix that. And the second one is I got tired of get fat to get strong, and get weak to get skinny.
Yeah.
I got tired of that cycle. It's like there's got to be a better way. I don't want to get fluffy.
Yeah.
Every time I bulk. So let's try this. And the first time I did it, it took me 3 to 4 months. But I looked back. I'm like, hey, look, I've lost 10% body fat. I went from 25 to 15% body fat and gained 5 pounds of muscle at the same time. And that was it for me. I'm done. I'm never going back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did the whole fluffy thing, man. I was 230 pounds.
Yeah.
At 5'7". I was fluffy as it gets, And that eat big to get big belief is just still rampant in the fitness community. Like you got to get huge, and you see people that do it successfully, right? You see people that go off on a tangent, eat everything inside, bulk up like crazy, and then are able to get super shredded. Now they don't advertise the other supplements they're on, so that's definitely part of the equation as well. But for me, it's like I don't want my lifestyle, enjoyment to just have to shift on such a drastic, continuum.
Right.
I'd rather just enjoy life every day and be comfortable in my skin, like how I look, look damn good year round, and then have periods where I'm a little thicker and a little bit more shredded. But that range is a much healthier range. Like I don't have to literally get an entire new wardrobe each time I'm going from a building phase to a cutting phase.
Yeah.
So I save money in that department too. And my overall, the stress on my organs is much less. Everything's just better. And like when you look at how much actual lean tissue you build at the end of it, it's not like you're building that much more by having the crazy building phase.
No.
Like you feel like you can walk through a wall because you've got a lot more weight. And when you have a lot more weight, you have different leverage points. So you can possibly move more weight in the gym. But when you lean down, you lose a lot of that, and you wind up losing more muscle.
Yep.
So it's like you have to just kind of pick and choose your battles. Same is true with like the whole carb versus keto. Like they're going to have a little bit more, water retention. They're going to gain more weight in the off season than I typically am. But when they lean down, they're going to lose a lot more too. And when I look at how I look at the end of the day, like I've built just as much, if not more, lean mass than they have, and I felt and looked a whole lot better in the process.
Right. And you're not messing up your hormones. You have a good relationship with food. There's all kinds of other side things that go into that.
100%.
Yeah, and good.
And you mentioned metabolism earlier. So metabolism is something that I've been preaching from the rooftops since day one as well. I don't know how this would be proven, but I believe that when you're following a ketogenic or carnivore diet, and the vast majority of your calories coming from fat and protein, specifically high quality sources of fat and protein, your metabolic window grows exponentially. It really illustrates that it's not just about the calories at that point. Even if you take a healthy individual, so for instance, I've got a client right now, and his metabolism wasn't as high as it should have been. He was consuming like 2,000 calories, or actually 1,800 calories on average. I've got him up to 2,600 calories now, and he's still losing weight. But if he had done that same 2,600 calories, coming mostly from carbs, he would have gained a hell of a lot more fat in that
Absolutely.
same time frame.
Yep.
So that's from like a metabolic standpoint in like a building phase or ramping up metabolism in general. Your healthy window, healthy range is going to be much, much broader following a keto or carnivore style approach.
Right. Because your body's more efficient. It's
Yeah.
going to use it way better. It's not going to be like, hey, what am I doing with this? I'm not supposed to have all this.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I've shown that as well, right? You know, I'm eating more than I've ever eaten before, but I'm losing weight. I think I even wrote an article on my page, like how to lose weight and eat more.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's about your metabolism. And people often, going back to the car analogy or the oven or whatever you want to call it, people often think of their metabolism as how do we burn fuel?
Mm-hmm.
That is part of it. The other part of it is how do you use nutrients? How does your body use the things that we're doing? Because your metabolism is literally every function of your body, right? From burning fuel, creating ATP, to growing hair, to, you know, replacing skin cells, to it's literally everything that your body does. All of the things that your body does is your metabolism. So all of the things that we do to our body, the food that we put in, the hormones that we stimulate, the vitamins that we take in, the micronutrients and the minerals, like all of that stuff affects it. The things that are environment, how much sleep we get, right? Red lights, vitamin D, exercise, like all of these things have effects that affect our metabolism. It's not just the food that we put in our mouth.
Yeah, and the absorption of the food that we do put in our mouth is so key too. That's where I've really kind of taken more of an interest in, you know, the meditation, the cool down phases, really activating that parasympathetic state prior to consuming nutrients, so your body's able to tap into and absorb those nutrients better. And especially if you're in like a building phase, so there's both sides are important. So if I'm in a deficit, then I want to make sure that my body's absorbing everything I'm consuming, because I'm already not eating enough and I'm hungry as it is.
Right,
you know?
yeah.
So I want to perform because my body needs to be absorbing that stuff. When I'm in a building phase and I'm consuming a surplus of calories, you know, if you're eating foods that your body just does not assimilate very well, very efficiently, then you're going to have a bunch of gastric distress. You're not going to be able to really build that much muscle, especially, you know, effectively. So being able to focus on foods that you know your body can assimilate, absorb, and use efficiently is absolutely key. And that takes some trial and error. Like for instance, last night we had a steak. Prior to that steak, you know, I'd been eating just ground beef and eggs. Ground beef and eggs is easier for my body to break down and use than a steak. Now my body can break down and use a steak pretty good, a lot better so than like, you know, a big burrito or something.
Yeah.
But ground beef and eggs is better for just a simple, you know, assimilation standpoint. And I feel like taking that nuance and acting on it is so incredibly important. But a lot of people don't take time to dive that deep, but it makes a difference.
Yeah, and it's the three things when it comes to overall health, right? Particularly with nutrition, we're looking at bioavailability, we're looking at satiety, and we're looking at nutrient density. So we want to make sure that, you know, we can eat the most nutritious foods ever, but if our body can't assimilate it because it's not bioavailable for us, it doesn't matter. Right. And if we're also not eating things that keep us full, then we're going to keep eating, and then we're going to overeat. So the three of those combined, and if you look at, for anybody that's wondering, if you look at any of those three things independently, right, just no dogma, no preconceptions, just go look up and do some research on what is the most satiating foods, what is the most bioavailable foods, what is the most nutrient dense foods.
It's not rice cakes.
It's not rice cakes, right? You're going to see that it's animal based. It's meat of some sort. Meat, eggs, poultry, cheese, like that kind of stuff is what's in there. Organ meat, if you want to get into the whole nose to tail conversation, is probably at the top of the list for all of it. But it's animal based products, and the thing about animal based products is, let's look at eggs for example. Nature's multivitamin. Yeah. Right? They just found out, I just saw a study from Switzerland, I think. They just found out there's a second type of vitamin D that's more bioavailable and more plentiful in egg yolks than we knew of. It's like triple the amount of vitamin D in egg yolks than we knew about.
Do you ever do like duck eggs?
I have. They're awesome.
Yeah, I need to find a good source for
eggs. I don't get them regularly, but I've had them. They're good.
Yeah.
So you look at eggs, like nature's multivitamin, and they're the perfect macro. Right? Most meat, beef, steak, it's the perfect macro. Like it's all there, just waiting for us. Like everything, we don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a segue on eat more meat, but
that's so true, man. I mean, I feel like most of our audience, people listening to this, probably are on that same page anyhow.
Yeah.
But I mean, It bears repeating.
You
know,
can't say it
go
enough,
wrong.
right?
Yeah.
Eat more meat.
100%.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about your perspective, right? Bodybuilding and things like that. The stuff that we're talking about for anybody listening goes for kind of everybody. This isn't just a bodybuilding discussion. This is a general fitness, general health thing.
Yeah.
Right. Prioritize the things that matter. Don't focus on the things that are going to set you off on tangents. Right. Figure out your path and stay on your path. Kind of follow it. Get feedback. I highly recommend everybody get a coach. I'm a coach. I have a coach.
Yeah.
Right. I have people that I can go to and say, look, am I on track? Am I doing this right? From a fitness perspective, from a nutrition perspective. I think everybody needs something like that. And I think that's a big part of the process. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have not been trained in fitness and nutrition. So you probably need somebody to provide guidance at some point in your journey to make sure you're on track. Right? I've been trained. I'm certified in all kinds of different things, and I still need people to help keep me on track. So it's just something that I think is one of the things that people miss out the most is asking for help.
Even if, like, there's a lot of people that know fitness nutrition listen to this as well.
Yeah.
And there's benefit to having an accountability factor or simply just outsourcing things in life. So
Absolutely.
Anything in my life that I know
Mm-hmm.
and I can just remove from my decision fatigue process, like remove it from the equation altogether so that I can focus on other things, I'll oftentimes just outsource that. So like a lot of people, like a lot of my clients know exactly how to manipulate their nutrition. They know how to manipulate macros, count macros, all that stuff. But simply having, like, I had a call with one of my clients the other day, and he's like, look, Robert, I know how to do all this stuff. I've seen a lot of success in working with you. But if I didn't have you as an accountability factor, I would eat more foods that were outside of this realm. Not necessarily bad foods. I would go out to eat more because I couldn't track the macros. You know,
Right.
I would just do things that are not optimal. So I would wind up spending more money on going out to eat than I would on your coaching. And it's like, that's just simply one area of my life where I can outsource it, let someone that knows what they're doing handle it, and then I can have, you know, more energy, more bandwidth, more mental bandwidth to focus on other areas of my life.
Right.
And like that reason alone is worthwhile in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Same thing. I have people that, you know, they know what keto is. They know how to do it.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, I just need someone that I can get with every week and who's going to say, did you do this? Did you do that? What about this? Here's a suggestion on that, and go, oh, I'll remember that next time, right? Just have that feedback.
That said, this is totally coming into like a business podcast here. I am about to totally change the way I do my coaching. I'm probably going to shift to only working with competition prep clients.
Okay.
That's my wheelhouse. That's my area of expertise. That's what I excel in. And I feel like so many people try and go so broad that they never specialize in anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, going ultra niche and really just doubling down on your strengths is key. So I'm probably going to shift that. I don't know when I'm going to shift to that, but probably sometime early in this year.
Yeah.
I'll shift to just working with contest prep clients.
I think that's awesome. I mean, I think specialization is key, and you can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
That's a whole. We could probably do a podcast on that, right? Just making people happy, because it's
do it.
never
Can't
going to
make
happen.
people happy.
It's never going to happen. You know, so yeah, and I'm in a completely different wheelhouse, right? I would not. If someone came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do a show," I would I'd give them two options. One, I would say, go talk to Rob, or two, I'll do it, but you have to understand it's not what I do, and everything we do is going to be an experiment.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to take that on, that's cool, but just so you know, that's not what I do. My focus is on helping people improve their everyday life.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm 48 years old. Competition for me is over.
Yeah.
My competition right now is trying to be better myself every day so that I can, we'd said before, I can get off the toilet when I'm 80 without help.
Is there anything that you're doing now that you like look at and you're like, man, back when I was in my 30s, this didn't hurt so bad?
Not right now. There have been.
There has been.
But right now, no.
See, I feel like you could just keep getting better, man.
No, I mean, well, I have, because I have been. So it's crazy. You know, I was in the Army. When I was in the Army, when I got out of basic training, I was 185 and 7% body fat without trying. You know, I was 18, 19 years old, right? Right now, I am 185 and about 13% body fat. So I weigh the same, a little bit less muscle, but I can do so much more.
Yeah.
I've gone through, prior to carnivore, prior to CrossFit, I have herniated discs in my neck. So I have herniated C4. At the time, I was 32. At the time when I was diagnosed with herniated C4, degenerative C5, C6. Since then, I used to get back pain, headaches, tingling, nerve pain down my arm, all kinds of those issues. Since starting CrossFit, most of that went away.
Nice.
Before carnivore, so during CrossFit, before carnivore, I had pulled adductor that was basically, it felt like a hernia. I was out for like 8 months because I couldn't get it to heal. Then I had 2 torn labrums in both shoulders. After carnivore, all of that's gone away. So I'm at the point now where I can do everything that I could do before, and I'm doing it better post carnivore than even when I was just doing CrossFit. Yeah. And I was more paleo at that time.
The only thing, I'm 29, the only thing, like if I look back at my prior years that I'm like, man, when I was that age, I could do that a lot better, is function at a high level with very little sleep. Like now, if I can tell if I don't get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it's like, I would never even faze me.
Yeah, I think not day to day, but if I go several days in a row without getting a lot of sleep, then I can feel it. But I've made some changes over the past year that have really improved my sleep too. That's a whole different discussion because I was drinking way too much coffee.
Yeah.
And it was causing some sleep issues. I was doing like 4 cups a day.
Yeah.
I was not consistent with my electrolytes and micronutrients, minerals, and that was causing an issue. So now that I'm more consistent with that helps a lot.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks ago, I started doing red light therapy.
Has that made a big difference?
Oh my gosh, dude, I sleep like a baby now.
You using like the Juve light or what?
I just got an infrared light bulb and a little clip light. I just hang it up on my over my couch, and I'll put it on for a half hour, 45 minutes, watch some TV or something before I go to bed.
That makes a difference.
Oh my God.
Are you wearing your blue light blocking glasses?
I do not wear the blue light glasses. But yeah, so just little stuff like that. My sleep has been amazing. But the one thing that, to answer your initial question, would be running.
Yeah.
And we ran yesterday.
Yeah.
Kicked my ass.
Sorry,
right?
bro.
No, it's okay. The run itself kicked my ass, which it shouldn't have. But, when I was 18, 19, I was in the Army, that's all we did.
Yeah.
I lifted weights in high school, and I came out of basic training way leaner and smaller than when I was in, my junior, senior in high school. But I could run my ass off.
Yeah.
I think I ran a 6:15 mile at the time, which I will never run again.
Yeah.
I'll never run
That's
that
pretty
fast
quick.
again. I have no desire to ever run that fast again.
That's pretty quick.
So now, I usually average around 8.5 mile, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
The fact that I can run a mile.
That's key. That's
right?
key.
Because
I think you should
I'm
be able
almost
to do that.
50. I want to run. I know so many people that are 30 that can't run a mile, 25 that can't run a mile.
Yeah.
And that's not where I want to be. I want to be 80 years old and say, hey, who wants to go for a run?
That's honestly why I'm so excited about, because like I've talked about having a long game approach towards nutrition, business, relationships, everything in life. I mean, it goes for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing how much I've been able to just improve my overall health and well-being in being keto as long as I have,
Yep.
makes me incredibly excited about what I'll be functioning like by the time I'm your age, by the time
Yep.
I'm 75, by the time I'm 93.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm going to be stepping up on stage with an 8-pack at 93 years old,
Let's
making
do it.
those young punks look bad. That's the key, man.
Yeah, well, because it's possible to fight the effects of time.
Yeah.
Because in a weird way, I think a lot of what society attributes to age is really a compounding effect of bad lifestyle.
Yeah. Totally, man.
Right? We see it all the time. Someone's 80 years old, they're in a walker, they're in a wheelchair, they can't get out of bed and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
You've been, over the last 80 years, you've been doing things every single day to constantly beat your body down and make it do more than it needs to. We are literally, as a society, making ourselves older than we are because we are tripling, doubling, quadrupling the amount of work our body has to do to survive.
And to take that one step further, so much of it I think is psychological. Like so many people have like had it. They have it in their mind that when they hit 50 years old, like it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
You know, or when they're 75, they should be looking for a home to go stay in. Like they've convinced themselves of that years prior, so that when that time comes, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You're right.
You know, that's bullshit, man. I'm gonna be 120 years old lifting weights and stuff. You know, like that's gonna be my self-fulfilling prophecy. So people just need to get their mind right first.
It's true, and it's hard, but you know that's what we're here for. Hopefully, enough people can see this stuff and go, "Wait, that's possible? What do you mean?" And because that's what it's about. That's all we need. That little glimmer of, "Wait, that's possible. Maybe that's something I can do."
Yeah.
And just keep saying that.
And people, like when people are older and they're looking good and functioning, I mean, it's an incredible inspiration for others. Like right now in the space, at the time of this recording, everybody's all goo gaga about Mark Sisson and how he looks.
Right.
And it's like, man, I'm going to make no disrespect to Mark, but I'm going to make him look bad when I'm his age.
But I mean, he's an incredible example.
Yeah, for sure.
Of that, right? How old is he now?
I don't even know, man.
He's got to be almost 60 or 60. Like,
I'm going to Google him. Google it. Yeah, you keep talking. Keep entertaining everybody here.
Because, I mean, he's been doing it. And his progression, I mean, you talk about compounding. It's just gotten better and better. You know, you think I've gotten younger as I've gotten older. I feel like he looks better now than he did 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, he looks great. He's healthy. Let's see here. 67 years old.
Yeah, oh gosh, he's way older than I thought. Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, he looks great. I mean, he's got abs, he's got bicep veins, he's got everything you would need.
We were talking about carnivore. Look at Dr. Baker, right? I mean, since I've started following him 3 years ago, I think he looks better now after having done carnivore for almost 4 years or 4 years plus than he did initially.
And put a little jab in there too and say that when he got his leanest, he was doing it high fat, you know.
Oh, was he?
He was.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's cool, dude. I like him a lot.
I will try. I tried high fat based on our conversations that we've had before, and I kind of took the information you gave me and I tried to make it work. The two things that happened to me. One, I felt like I was hungry all the time.
Yeah.
And that could be that change, that adaptation that you talked about. You know, you get used to doing one thing. But I felt like I was almost, not really half, but I was significantly reducing the amount of protein that I was used to eating.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I can't eat enough. Like I always wanted to eat more.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I didn't lose fat. I felt like I gained fat.
All right. So we're both building right now, right?
Yeah.
When do you anticipate doing another cut?
90 days.
In 90 days?
Yeah.
I'll be building still by then. I won't be doing a cut anytime soon. But,
but so here's the thing, and this is one of the points I'm making with what I'm doing is I don't think there needs to be a cut. Yeah. So actually never, right? Because my goal is to cut and build at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm at 13% now. My goal is in 90 days I'll be 10-ish, 9 to 10, but at the same time have shown an increase in lean mass.
And an increase in calories during that time span too, right?
Most likely, but usually it's not much. The last few times I've done this, it's only gone up a couple hundred calories as far as like a TDE perspective. Yeah. So there won't be a cut. This is my bulk and cut at the same time. I've
personally always gravitated to having a defined building phase and a defined cutting phase. I feel like I'm more effective in reaching that desired goal when I'm doubling down on one primary goal.
Right.
I definitely understand the appeal to what you're doing as well. However, if you ever want to do a cut and you want to try high fat, I'll coach you, man. Let me coach you for free. I'll do exactly like I would you a contest prep.
Okay.
And
so you're just trying to sucker me into doing a show, aren't you?
Yeah, I would suck you into a show, man. I mean, what's crazy is you would be in the masters division, and you would slaughter them, man. You would slaughter them. Like they would be like looking at you, like this guy is not in the masters division. But then you'd pull up your birth certificate or whatever, and you show otherwise. You know, like you would be dangerous on stage.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, man, do it.
After I just told you yesterday, there's no way in hell I'm ever doing it.
I know, but you were looking at people that had done it, you know, traditional ways,
right?
And watching people go through a traditional way, I wouldn't want to do it either. Hell, I mean, that just looks miserable. It is miserable. I've done it that way. It's not fun. But if you ever want to do a cut, I can talk you into stepping on stage. I'll do like a high fat cut with you, and I guarantee you'd be shredded, man.
Oh, that'd be interesting to see. And we could document it. We could just put the whole thing online and do it. Yep. You might talk me into that. I don't know if I'll get on stage, but maybe I'll go through the process.
Man, you got to do it. Like, if you go through the process and you push yourself that far, like being on stage is just the icing on top. Like people say it's all for that. I mean, that's not it at all. Like it's a mental battle. It's you against you. the journey itself is where it's at.
Yeah.
But being able to like have that home stretch vision and then kind of top it off with being on stage to make it a full circle journey is pretty fulfilling, man. It's pretty rewarding. You learn a lot about yourself in the process.
Yeah. Okay.
Give it some
Let
thought.
that soak in and kind of
simmer.
let that marinate
simmer.
a little bit.
Was there anything on your list of things that we wanted to make sure to cover that we haven't already?
Well, I think we went a whole bunch of different directions. I mean, some of the stuff that I had on my list, we can probably cover in other talks that we do or videos that we do. You mentioned something about progressive overload, and there was some some training concepts.
Yeah. So like the periodization, the undulation.
Yeah, periodization, progressive overload, supercompensation, some of that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, man, just dive in. We'll just keep rolling.
So when we talk about actually implementing fitness, like how, what are some of the things that you have to consider when you're doing fitness activity? And progressive overload is one of them, right? It's the basis for getting better, right? You have to do more than you did before in order to improve what you can do. So if you're not doing more, you're never getting better. So you can take it to the extreme. I think some people take it to the extreme, and I do this sometimes where I look at every workout compared to the last workout I did that was similar, and I try to do something a little bit more. Add 5 pounds, do a couple extra reps, add a set, like something a little bit more. I don't always do it that way, but that's kind of, sometimes I look at what I'm doing and I do just a little bit more. In most cases, and this is where periodization comes in, most cases you want to do that in some kind of a regular interval. So you have maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks of doing a set of exercises at a certain weight, at a certain rep scheme. Maybe even it is progressive, but then in the next cycle, you increase the complexity, the intensity, something to make it a little bit harder, more challenging, and bring yourself up to a higher level of work capacity.
Yeah.
So that's just an understanding that for those people who have spent the last 3 years on an elliptical, that it's time to do something else.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, again, kind of going back to the dichotomy of things, training is a classic example. Some people are just debilitated in their desire to venture away from the elliptical because they don't know the first thing about progressive overload or training or how to get better. So a lot of times they'll just do the same circuit that they find on some, cosmopolitan cover magazine, and they'll never change the rep scheme, they'll never change the weight, they'll just do that repetitively years and years and years. And their body will grow and acclimate to that point. But then as soon as that new baseline has been established and there's no need to grow beyond that because there's no additional stimulus, the body's not going to change at all.
Right. And that's another principle. That's the SAID principle, right?
Yeah.
Specific adaptation. I forget what the first word is. Adaptation to imposed demand.
Yeah.
Right. So your body will adapt to the things you make it adapt to.
100%.
So if you're always doing the same thing, you'll be adapted to that.
Which is why the Oura ring, it says that you need to stop and relax a little bit. It could be dangerous because, you got to push past that threshold.
Right.
So you got to. Progressive overload as a concept, it's very, very simple. Like, progressive overload doesn't have to mean more weight necessarily. It can. Right. It can just simply mean more time under tension. Another intensity realm through a drop set, superset. Better form, like any of that classifies.
I'm glad you said that because I was thinking it's specific adaptation to imposed demand, by the way.
Gotcha.
The technique and form is a category or an aspect of intensity. Yeah. So if we're going to go, just so everybody knows, we're doing some videos on Turkish get-ups, and we're going to teach Rob how to do some Turkish get-ups today.
You're going to make me look bad, but I won't feel too bad because I smoked in that run.
There you go. But that's a perfect example of intensity. So for someone who's never done Turkish get-ups before, we teach the half get-up first, right? We teach, or someone has a shoulder issue, or someone can't hold the weight. Like, there's modifications and progressions based on someone's ability that we can progress through the levels. Yeah. So if someone can't do a full Turkish get-up, we teach them a half Turkish get-up. If they can't do a half, we teach them how to do an arm bar. We teach them something that's progressive so they can improve the intensity, complexity, performance of the technique, as opposed to always just saying it has to be faster or it has to be heavier. Yeah. It doesn't have to be that way. There's more to it.
A lot more to it. Yeah. A lot more to it. So what are some, like, for me personally, I've been doing like an 8-day rotational split. So I do. This would be kind of hard to explain via audio, but basically I used to do a traditional bro split in which, like, you know, chest days Monday, Wednesdays legs, or whatever. Each body part was trained once a week, and that worked really well until it didn't. And after a certain amount of time, your muscle reach a level of maturity. You got to have more frequency. So now I hit each muscle group twice a week. One focused on heavy, a little bit lower rep scheme, just more weight in general, and one is focused on more of that hypertrophy rep scheme, 8 to 15, sometimes 20 reps, more of a focus on blood flow specifically and just form and function. And I'll hit those muscle groups twice a week, and I'll do that in an 8-day block instead of a normal 7-day cycle. So it's falling on a different day each week, basically.
How many days in between sets, body parts? 2, 3?
Yeah, usually 2 or 3. I've got 2 recovery days in that 8-day cycle.
Okay.
And that's worked really, really well. And I'm pretty much, I'm mapping all this out, but basically I'm only really tracking my primary compound movements. I'm not tracking, you know, all the auxiliary stuff. You probably should, but I just don't want to get too deep into the weeds. So I'm only tracking my, you know, primary compound movements: squats, deadlifts, overhead press, sumo. I'll track sumo deadlifts as well. But as long as I'm increasing either the rep count, the weight in those, and everything else is rising, then I'm happy. You know, I'm going to be increasing calories on a bi-weekly basis. I'm going to be increasing the resistance or the intensity with that on a bi-weekly basis. And as long as I'm seeing progress there, I'm building muscle. You know, that's as difficult, air quotes, as it needs to be. A lot of people try to overthink how they grow muscle, and because they overthink it, they just don't progress at all.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be hard.
No, it doesn't. And I think understanding what your goal is the key.
Yeah.
Like, your goal is very different than mine. I'm gonna guess here. You're mostly aesthetic and looking for a look, right? Because as a bodybuilder, that's what it's all about.
Yep.
I'm looking more at function, so I'm looking at more myofibrillar hypertrophy. You're looking at more sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, right? You're looking at changing the shape and size of your muscles. I'm looking at more the function of how my muscles work.
Yeah.
So that is different, and that's a little different. Now, you're doing a good job of balancing both of those out, because you're getting some myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic work, right? So the difference being, myofibrillar is more strength training, right? Working the heavier weights, lower rep schemes, and then the sarcoplasmic is more, for lack of a better word, fluid building size in the muscle. Like, you talk about blood flow and making each muscle fiber bigger. As opposed to increasing the density and strength of each fiber. So you're getting a little bit of both of those. I know a lot of bodybuilders who focus mostly on sarcoplasmic and just working in the high rep range. Like, they never do anything under 12 reps.
Yeah, and for me, like, I don't know, like, to me, I love bodybuilding. That's my sport. But I don't want any of my bodybuilding training to, you know, distract from or hinder my lifestyle endeavors as well.
Right.
So,
and
like,
that's why I
having
like
functional strength is good.
Yeah, that's why I like your philosophy on how this is all working, because you're a bodybuilder who's functional.
Yeah.
I know a lot of bodybuilders who are not functional.
Yeah, totally.
All right, but my focus is definitely more on the functional side. So when I'm looking at stuff, I'm looking at the variations in the programming that I do is complex, functional movements, usually in the 1 to 6 range, 6 to 8 range, 1 to 8 range, based on what the primary movements are. And most of the stuff that I do that is higher rep range is more the accessory work.
Yeah. Right.
So working on stability motions and working on mobility things that are more high rep stuff. So working on developing the scaps, developing the rhomboids, developing shoulder things, core work, glute med work, adductors, things like that, specifically focusing on hamstring stuff, calf stuff, to kind of support the major complex movements. Yeah. So that's where my mix comes in.
I love it, man. I'm going to go do some Turkish get-ups, man. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Call this good for a podcast? That's round 2 right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, sweet, man. And again, where can people go to find you?
apxts.com is the website. Bronson Dant 72 on Instagram, Facebook. And it's just the Apex Training System is the brand.
All right, man. You're about to make me look bad. You ready? Turkish get-up time.
Let's do it.
All right, brother.